Hi, it's Holly, and I'm here today with my August wrap-up. And I read 17 books and 2 novellas this year. It is a lot of books, but it's definitely lower than I've been doing in the past. I think I kind of slowed down a lot of my reading this month, and I kind of struggled with finding books to, like, what I wanted to read, which is sad because I own like 80 books that are unread. I've decided I read a lot more romance this month, so I decided I'm going to split this up into sections. So there's going to be a young adult section, a new adult, which is really just one book, but whatever, and the romance section. So let's start with the new adult books. So I read 3 young adult books that weren't in a series. Well, are, but I don't know. Let's just go. Okay. Opposition by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which is the 5th and final book in the Lux series. And I gave this 5 stars. I did really like it. I thought it was a great conclusion to the series. But I like Origin, and I think even Obsidian just a little bit more. I feel like I read this so long ago, I don't even have things to say. I don't know. I really liked Katie, though. That I do remember. I remember really liking the way Katie handled herself in this book. Like, she didn't take crap from anybody. So and I read Alienated by Melissa Landers. I bought this month, and I read it, and this book really impressed me. I gave it 4 stars, and really the only thing keeping me from giving it 5 stars is I just have a lot of world questions, really, especially about the alien culture. But this is a series, so I'm hopeful that a lot of those questions will be answered in the next book, which I think comes out early next year, like January, I think. It's basically about a boy and a girl, and she is human from Earth, and they're kind of humanoid creatures too, but they're from another planet, and he ends up becoming an exchange student, and she stays with her, and it's about them kind of dealing with those things. I really liked the way Melissa Landers handled this. It isn't like a boy and a girl meet and then fall in love. They actually have a lot of issues, and it really reads kind of like a commentary on integration. I don't know, I used to watch American Dreams, which was on NBC years and years ago, and I feel like in a lot of ways this felt similar in a way to me, and you get to see both sides of things, and neither of these characters are necessarily right, and neither of them are wrong in their belief systems. But yeah, I don't know. This book impressed me. It was more than I thought it was going to be. And then I read Belladonna by Fiona Paul, and this is the 2nd book in the Secrets of the Eternal Rose trilogy. I read Venom several months ago, and I actually started this at the beginning of the month and was just kind of bored, so I put it down and went on to read a crap ton of pretty much everything else. I gave it 4 stars just like I did Venom. I enjoyed it, but I don't know, it's just missing something for me. I think I liked Venom just a little bit more. There's sort of a love triangle in here, but I feel like neither guy is in the story very often, so is it even a love triangle? I just feel I love romance, don't get me wrong, but I almost feel like the romance was just thrown in there because she thought it was needed. And I enjoy the mystery aspects of it so much more, trying to figure out what's going on with so the main character Cass, she ends up kind of stumbling upon this secret society, and she's just learning more and more about it and more about her and her past, and I'm so much more intrigued by that storyline and what's going on there than I am by the romance. The romance kind of just doesn't mesh well with me. I could read a complete series, and this was kind of a impulse decision thing, and I do plan on doing a full series review that'll be up in the next couple weeks, I think. So that is the Covenant series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Apparently I was reading a lot of Jennifer L. Armentrout this month. I don't know. So it is, there's a prequel novella, Demon, Half-Blood, Pure, Deity, and novella Elixir, Apollyon, and Sentinel. I would say I would read Demon after reading Half-Blood, not before. She does a pretty good job of like setting things up, considering you only have about 60 pages, but I think it would just be a little easier to read that if you've already had the world building from Half-Blood. Demon, Half-Blood, yeah, both of those got 3 stars from me, and then Pure, Deity, Elixir, and Apollyon got 4 stars, and then Sentinel, the last book, got 5 stars from me, and it's definitely my favorite. I feel like maybe Elixir should get 4.5, the second little novella, which this is a must read. Like, I think you could totally read the series and not read Demon, but it does help. But Elixir, you have to read it. First of all, these books are told from a girl named Alex's perspective, and she's fine-ish, but this is from another character, Aiden's perspective, and this, I just loved him and that perspective. If you want to know more, check out the review when it goes up, but I will say this series definitely has like a Vampire Academy style feel. It gets better, it does becomes its own story. So then we have the new adult book I read this month, and that is Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I gave this 5 stars, and I did review it if you want to check that out. It's there's a non-spoiler review section and then a spoilery discussion section. I did really enjoy this. I thought it was a really good book and everything, but it's not my favorite. I said this in my review too. I like Maybe Someday more. I think I like Hopeless and Losing Hope more too. I had like a delayed emotional reaction to it, which was interesting. And I really liked the way this story was told. Like the perspective and the storytelling technique was a little different. I feel like Colleen Hoover does a lot. She kind of incorporates different styles and different things that other people don't do, and I really like that she's willing to take those risks. And I did really like Miles. I mean, I like Tate too, she's great, but Miles in here is just awesome. So then is another series that I read. Actually, this is the first thing I read this month, and I filmed a review and a discussion video, but it's like 40 minutes long, and I'm just like putting off editing it. But I plan on doing that soon, and so it should be up, because I had a lot to say about these books. So yeah. So I read the 50 Shades of Grey series. So I actually borrowed these from my stepmom, and I did read them because the trailer came out. I'd kind of been really opposed to the whole 50 Shades of Grey thing, and then I started to feel like maybe I was being unnecessarily judgmental, and really my issues with it isn't the sexual content. I feel like a lot of people feel that way, but as a romance reader I could care less about that, like in theory, but I had issues with it being Twilight fanfiction just because I'm not a fan of Twilight, so I didn't think I would like something that was based on Twilight, but I figured I would give them a shot and everything. So I gave the first book 3 stars, which is 50 Shades of Grey, and then 50 Shades Darker and 50 Shades Freed, both 4 stars. I'm not sure I would ever reread these books, but I am glad I read them, and I talked a lot in my review and discussion, so if you want to know more, you can check that out. I will say, in general, I don't like Anastasia Steele. I think she gets better as the series goes on, but I think the books would have been more interesting if they were told from Christian's perspective. I thought there was way too much sexual content, which she seemed to get better at, again, as the series continued. I felt like she relied too much on that to propel her story forward instead of relying on her characters and the non-sexual part of their relationship. Oh, and then because I had read those, I read an ebook. It was called The Dom Project, and I have no idea what the authors' names are. It was by 2 authors. Their names are kind of like hard to pronounce, and I don't remember them really, but I did, it's on my Goodreads, and I did review it there, so you can always check it out from there if you want. It's a BDSM story. So 50 Shades of Grey was my first like true BDSM story. There's a Dark Lover book, a Black Dagger Brotherhood book that has like BDSM like themes and content, but I wouldn't necessarily classify it as a BDSM story. It's one of my favorite books in that series. I think she handles that topic well. But so I was kind of had like conflicting feelings after reading 50 Shades of Grey, if that was a subgenre that was for me or not. Mostly I have issues with like the pain thing. Like I just, like tying people up and role playing doesn't really bother me, like as a reader, but the pain thing I just don't completely get. And I think maybe someday I'll find a book that makes it understandable to me, but I don't know. So I thought I would give this one a try. It was pretty cheap, and I had heard about it on the DBSA podcast, and they said it was kind of like lighter, fluffier BDSM, which it is. Though it's not like, neither of these characters have like dramatic psychological issues from their past that have caused them to be like a part of this lifestyle. It's just who they are, which I really appreciated. I did give it 3 stars. It was a perfectly good read, and I think it was probably erotica more than it's romance, and this is probably my issue with erotica, is I wanted more relationship-y bits. So in general throughout the story it was pretty good, but as it came to an end there was just a lot of unanswered questions and things I didn't feel like were fully developed. If you're looking for kind of like an intro to BDSM reads, even though I've only read like 5 books now at this point, I would suggest it. I feel like it's a good intro book. I'm not turned off the subgenre, but I'm not sure it's for me, but I kind of want to read some more before I fully decide if Wallbanger by Alice Clayton and Rusty Nailed by Alice Clayton. And I did video reviews for both of these. I gave them both 5 stars. They're both fantastic. They're hilarious, great romance novels, contemporary romance. I highly suggest checking them out. They are related, like Rusty Nailed is a sequel to Wallbanger, like a direct sequel. It follows the same characters, so you'd want to read Wallbanger first. Wallbanger is a beautiful, hilarious romance, and this is just a great follow-up to it. Just check out the reviews if you want to know more, because this video is getting kind of long. Rolling books! I read Rogue with a Brogue by Suzanne Enoch, and I didn't realize that she was coming out with new books. I'm like so behind on her. She just like completely slipped my mind. This is a historical romance. I'm kind of like hit or miss on the Scottish set stories. I either really love them or I really hate them. And I think a lot of times it has to do with what kind of mood I'm in at the time. Totally in the mood to read this. I had just seen the Outlander pilot, so I was super in. This is the second book in a series, which I now have since bought the first book and need to read it, but like with most romance novels, I don't think you have to read like them in order. And this is about 2 feuding families, and inadvertently 2 members of the family meet and kind of develop a friendship that turns into a loving relationship, and their families don't want them together because obviously they can't stand each other. And it's like a real feud, like people die kind of feud. It's not just like a casual like, oh, we hate each other. I give this 4 stars, which is a pretty good rating for me, especially for romance novels. I very rarely give out 5 stars, even though apparently I was pretty free with them this month when it came to the romance. I think this actually is a really good, I really liked the romance in here. It developed really, really well. Like these characters were attracted to each other, but they didn't fall in love immediately. And even throughout it, when they had kind of committed to being together, the heroine especially was definitely, she was like confused about whether or not she really loved him, and if they were willing to if she was willing to risk everything, losing her family, potentially putting herself in like mortal danger to be with a guy. And I really appreciated that, you know, she thought things through. And he is great. He's kind of different. Like, he's strong, but he's not this overbearing alpha male, and he's not afraid to be like, no, I really like you. And he was just something a little different for me. And I would say this is kind of a good intro-y historical Scottish set book. because the majority of the book actually takes place in London. So you have these two Scottish-y characters. She's not quite as Scottish, because her family's been living in London for so long, but so you have a lot of those Scottish feels and a lot of the Scottish characters, but it's more English set. So if you're used to reading like a ballroom or a traditional Regency romance and you're thinking about going into the Scottish world, I think this would be like a good transitional book for you. And then the last book is another book I plan on reviewing soon, but yeah, and the cover is kind of special, but whatever. So this is a library book, and it is Flowers from the Storm by Laura Kinsall, and it's got Bobbio on this cover is particularly special. I don't know, but this is an old book. It's from the early 90s, but I'd kind of heard a lot about this book, and I feel like it gets positive and negative reviews. It's about a guy named Christian, and he's a duke, and he's kind of like, you know, your typical romance hero. Like, he just kind of sleeps around and doesn't really care about anything, and has his whole life ahead of him, and is just doing whatever he wants, has great friends, and is wealthy, and all of that. And then I think it's like an aneurysm or something happens, and he almost dies, and he ends up losing a lot of his like vocal abilities. Like, he can't speak, he can barely understand when people are speaking to him. Everyone thinks he's an idiot, and like by the strictest definition of the term. And he gets locked up in basically an insane asylum. He had previously met on, like, right before this happened, this young woman named Maddie. She's a Quaker, and he and her dad were working together on a mathematical paper, and she ends up at this insane asylum. She doesn't know he's there, and they end up kind of forming a connection. So I gave this book 5 stars. It could be uncomfortable for you to read, because I definitely struggled with the idea of her like nursing him and then them developing a like romantic relationship. But I personally feel like Laura Kinsall did a really good job of navigating that potential issue. It's a beautiful story in addition to being a good romance. So that's my I read like less books this month than last month, and I feel like this wrap up is even longer. Why? Okay, so those are the books I read in August. If you have any questions or you want to talk about what you read in August, feel free to let me know. Or if you've read any of these books and have anything to say about them, we can talk about that too. Thanks for watching. Bye!